Red Phantom Process Art. Art specs from the client. This is an 11 by 17 vignette with pencil and ink render. It features Red Phantom, an original character created by Patrick Daniel and Christopher Domingo. Patrick described the action as follows. Red Phantom is a Batman Daredevil vigilante type character who swings through Chicago looking for hoodlums and ne'er-do-wells. Perfect! Sounds like a lot of fun. To get started, we'll first need character design. Here is design art from Patrick showing Red Phantom in action. Finally, we'll need reference. When I think of Chicago, I first think of the iconic Willis Towers, and I add a few more images with distinctive city architecture, which brings us to Step 1, Concept. This brainstorm session is captured by small, fast thumbnail sketches that explore different compositions, camera angles, and poses. The first concept features the character in the upward part of a swing, with his body line arcing from his raised arm down through his lead leg. This second concept features the character at the start of his swing, in the act of diving with a strong body line from a rooftop. This third concept features the character at the transitional high point of his swing, ready to change direction through the city. We're up high with him, the city stretching far below. Since I've changed visual perspective, I want to add a little more detail to the buildings and the other concepts to better capture the effect of the city on each one. Given this is my first exposure to this character, I think it'll be most important to find an athleticism that uniquely fits him. This fourth concept features the character in the accelerating downward part of his swing, again with a smooth body line. As with the other concepts, I want to give the background some weight. Since these quick thumbnails ended up different sizes, I scanned them into Photoshop and placed them in a template of the same size to better judge the figure physicality and overall impact of the concept. So here they are. A, B, C, and D. To me, A feels like Nightwing, B feels like Daredevil, C feels like Superman, and D feels like the winner, which brings us to Step 2, Layout. Drawn at reduced size, this is yet another fast sketch drawn over the winning concept thumbnail to be sure the key dynamics are properly captured. I want to capture the correct body proportion and form here, giving myself enough of a foundation so that the next step can simply focus on the surface details. Once the figure anatomy is advanced a bit and the costume details are added, I can better gauge the energy and flow in the figure. I felt that the first sketch was pretty good, but I wanted another try to see if the overall sense of flow can be improved. It was important to Patrick that the elements of his design really show flow, his ponytail, the fur on his gloves and boots, and his belt. Starting over and intentionally working fast and loose, I developed another figure. Honestly, it took me a while to decide which one to choose, and while I was deciding, I turned my attention to the background. I repeated the same approach for the background. For these kinds of splash images, I find it very helpful to render the foreground figure and the background separately at this stage. Note here, it's important to have a pretty good idea of how the foreground and background will interact, but rendering them separately offers a lot of flexibility when finalizing the overall composition because you can adjust each one independently of the other. With the 2-point perspective system established, I sketch in the buildings and evaluate. While the sketch was perfectly suitable for the task at hand, I wanted another try at it to see if any of the dynamics in the structures could be improved. I start out the same way and find the 2 vanishing points, but I work out the main foreground building as if it were a 3D structure, and as before, I sketch in the other buildings and evaluate. Having made my choices of figure and background, I bring them into Photoshop and make the final compositional adjustments of relative size and placement. One of my favorite framing devices for a vignette is a set of offset circles, so I bring them in and adjust their size and placement. A final tweak of the figure ensures that he cleanly and clearly breaks out of the framing circles in 3 places, increasing the effect of his dynamic energy. This layout is then enlarged to full size and printed out, which brings us to Step 3, Pencils. Drawn on a light box using the layout as the underdrawing, here we finalize the final forms and shapes, surface details, and light and shadow. As usual, I start with the face, as it is such an important storytelling element. Faces give the viewer immediate insight into the character's emotions and psychology without a word being spoken. I prefer to render and pencil very tightly in order to very clearly define these critical details, not only of the face, but of the other elements in the art as well. While stylized, the art is still grounded in reality, and that has to show clearly in the art. The penciling is the best place to figure out all of the minutiae encountered along the way, because if you initially get it wrong, it's easy to scrub off and try again. I also prefer to completely fill in the shadows in the art. It helps me ensure proper balance of the overall composition so it feels right on the page, and it properly directs the viewer's attention to the center of interest. Patrick also shared that Red Phantom does his crime fighting at night, so I thought a full moon would set the mood nicely and complement the fully shadowed skyscraper tops. This tight pencil drawing progresses to Step 4. Inks. While you are free to use your favorite inking tools, I use Crowquill nibs, brushes, and technical pens to focus on line work, separating planes, and applying special effects. When the art features a special frame, I'll often ink it first. This frame limits the background, so it makes sense to define it early. However, since the figure breaks the frame in 3 places, it's important to ink these areas first, then the frame, then everything else. As with the pencils, I render the face as early as makes sense. I take my time and great care to manage the lines used in this essential part of the image. Other tools such as French curves, ship's curves, circle and ellipse templates, triangles, and straight edges all have their uses. I freely rotate the art as needed for the tool at hand, and I carefully work on different parts of the art as needed to allow areas just inked to fully dry. When it's all done, we sign our work. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you create cool art of your own.